Okay, so hi, we're here with Kieran McConville from Concern Worldwide. Concern Worldwide is an incredible humanitarian charity, NGO. They work in 20 odd of the poorest countries in the world, bringing aid and basic needs and eradicating poverty. As well as that, they have lots of emergency programs, such as when there's an earthquake, when there's flooding, when there's famine, when there's refugee crisis, Ebola, etc., etc. They are everywhere all the time. They're a fantastic one-stop shop to give your money to, knowing that it will affect as many people as possible. So, Mr. Kieran, who is here, you can see him. That's him there, in case you were confused. I traveled with him to Kenya, and I've seen him in action. And as much as he hates hearing anything nice about himself, yeah, wrap it up, Alexi. On my first day in the field, I was nervous about how to connect with people, not wanting to feel like you're trying to come in and sort of solve all the problems, but and what kind of attitude to take. And I just watched Kieran. He has such an open smile and an open personality that people open up to him, and he ends up being able to help so many people. So that's the embarrassing part over.
Can you be my agent?
I'll be your agent, yes, 50-50. So we're going to go for a quick fire round. And the questions start, fingers on buzzers, right now. So could you give us a quick list of countries that you work in?
Okay, we work in places like Haiti, we work in the continent of Africa and West Africa, like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Central Africa. There are countries like Congo, South Sudan, Central African Republic. Up in the Sahel, the borders of the desert there in Northern Africa, we have Chad and Niger, the Horn of Africa, which is Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya. There's Burundi, there is Malawi. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. There's the Middle East, where we have a lot of work with Syrian refugees in Turkey and Lebanon and within Syria itself with displaced communities. Then there is Bangladesh, there is Pakistan, there's Afghanistan. That's a quick selection.
Fantastic. Next question. 2020 has been obviously a crazy year. People, myself included, were worried that COVID was going to, as soon as it hit these countries that you've mentioned, that it was going to spread like wildfire through the refugee camps, etc., etc. It didn't seem to do that. Quick answer: why was that? Why did it not happen?
It has affected some countries quite badly. So, for example, Bangladesh and Pakistan have seen quite large numbers, but in the main, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, the numbers have been remarkably and thankfully quite small. There have been a lot of border closures, a lot of lockdowns. There are theories about, the young average age of the population on the continent of Africa that has helped to protect them. There are theories about higher immunity as a result of all the various different things that people are exposed to. There are theories about BCG injections that kids have had when they're young. Nobody really knows. This will be a study that will go on for years.
But even though it's passed over quite lightly, COVID will affect these countries greatly because of the domino effect from countries like America and Europe, etc., etc. Please explain why.
This is our biggest worry. So the global pandemic has obviously caused border closures. It's disrupted markets. It's making economies depressed. A lot of economies are going into recession. The communities that we work with are very vulnerable. They are surviving often, people surviving on less than $2 a day, which is kind of the definition of extreme poverty. They eat what they earn. They grow what they eat. Any kind of impact on this, on people who are living on a knife edge, is going to be substantial. And this is going to be a huge hit, and we're massively worried about the impact, most especially on food security. There are a lot of dire predictions about the numbers of people who are going to be going hungry. There are predictions of famine. The whole thing is having a huge impact and will have an ongoing impact on the people that we work with.
One example we spoke about earlier is, for example, the fashion industry. I work in the fashion industry, and therefore, once the fashion industry has its financial problems, that means they order less, which means that down the domino effect, the garment worker is affected, they lose their job, which then affects everybody, like the whole community, because the food stall person, the rickshaw driver, the just everybody. And most importantly is the education aspect, because for example, you mentioned in Haiti that parents no longer have money to send their kids to school. So all of a sudden, this is a whole new generation of kids who were going to go to school to get jobs, now will no longer be going to school, not getting the education, and therefore a whole new generation of possible potential income is now suddenly gone. So this is a really long-lasting effects. Okay, so this year, obviously, Black Lives Matter happened, not just in America, but around the world. That one thing that came up is how the representation of people of color in media, whether it's in movies, in music, in anything. And the charity aspect of it comes into play, because when you see images of people of color from Africa, more often than not, the imagery that we see over here in America and in Western countries is the starving child, or the famine and the drought, etc., etc. And then you have these other images of the great white savior swooping in to save the day. And obviously, all of your work is got the best intention, but there is also the side effect that we also have to address nowadays, which is how do we represent these people in a fair way? Is this something that Concern is addressed or trying to address?
Absolutely, and it's the time that's in it it's so important that this is helping move this discussion along. It's something that has not been properly dealt with by the industry, I would say, over time. There's been a dichotomy between the people who do the work and the people whose job it is to raise funds to support that work. And the fact that this conversation is going on and that it's at a heightened level, I feel like it's moved forward so much more in the last number of months than it has in the last number of years, is so important. We've been moving away from a lot of that sort of imagery over time. There are we work in places where sometimes there are emergencies, and sometimes it's necessary to raise the public consciousness about it. What we really want to do is to be talking about success. And in my travels around the various countries that we work in, the thing that always sticks with me is the strength and the resilience and the willpower and the smartness and the ability of the people that we work with, who are in difficult circumstances, but who will take any opportunity they can get to make life better. And that's the kind of story. They're the kind of stories that we want to be telling. As an industry, we need to get better at telling it. It's so welcome, this discussion that's happening now. There are no great white saviors. Some of us may happen to be white. Actually, a very small percentage of the people who work for Concern are white, as it happens. But it doesn't mean that we can't care or help. But obviously, the power should lie with the people, and we work in partnership a lot with communities. It's a huge element of what we do. And I think it's great, to be honest, that this has become so much more of an issue in the wider public forum.
Right. Well, I think that you touched upon very quickly is what's so great is that Concern doesn't swoop in and just impose its will on everybody. You really sort of work with the communities, empowering them and enabling them and helping them solve their own problems.
It makes it much more difficult and slower sometimes to get work done. But in the end, what we do is much more sustainable. The people that you're working with are the people who know their own challenges and their own issues best.
Yeah.
And they are the people who can feed best into the solutions. And it's up to us to listen and to partner with these communities and to get ourselves to a point where we don't have to be there anymore, and that communities have sustainable ways of improving their economic circumstances.
Right. So lastly, to finish off, during this time of COVID and this year, obviously people are more strapped for cash than they usually are. And people who have donated are now saying, well, I've only got like such a small amount compared to what I used to give. It's not really worth me giving anything. And I think that people don't realize that every small donation counts because it adds up. And I think that I've asked you in the past, for example, like just to put a price on something, what if I was to give like a $5 or $10 or $2 or whatever donation, what does it apply to? What does it relate to?
I mean, it's difficult to translate these things directly sometimes, but I can give you an example. For example, like the WFP will tell you that a food ration for a person costs 61 cents. Okay, so we're talking about 130 million extra people needing food aid this year alone as a result of COVID. But each of those is a human being, is a person, and we deal with people in that way. $50 will provide a course of therapeutic food that will bring an extremely acutely malnourished child back from the brink of starvation. There are simple things like, say, for example, if you're a Syrian family in Lebanon, a hygiene kit that will, help your family with dignity and, with your hygiene and sanitation. That's about $20. You can buy seeds for a backyard vegetable garden that would provide extra nutrition for like $5. You could run a health center in Somalia for about $100, and these are things that have such a tremendous impact on people. If you can imagine yourself in a position where you have almost nothing, especially, for example, if you're a refugee and you have fled with nothing but the clothes on your back, the difference that donations and that these interventions can make in terms of dignity, in terms of saving lives. It sounds a bit corny to say, but it's also priceless,
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing. And I always tell people, set up a monthly donation, even if it's $2 a month or $5 a month or $100 a month, whatever you can afford, because then it's like you do it and you forget about it. But at least you know that each month it's building up and it's building up and it's going into this pool. And you guys are a fantastic one-stop shop where you do so much that I know that a lot of the time when I watch the news, if there's some disaster or refugee crisis or disease or whatever it is, or flood or famine, I know that pretty much there's a good chance you guys are there with your boots on the ground. So so you guys are amazing. And that was our rapid questions with Kieran McConville. You did okay.
I hope I gave the right answers.